Okay, recording in progress. So the first thing I want to stress in this talk is burnout is something that happened in a long period of time. It is very subtle. Burnout is something that the most impactful thing is to work on prevention, and once that became a problem, you need to get help with professional help. And the only one thing that you can do if your teammate is struggling with burnout is connecting, supporting, or protecting. So, but what do we mean by burnout per se? Sorry. Okay, we are going to delete this. What do we mean by burnout? Essentially, I try to move beyond the World Health definition, which is very good, that definition, because it stresses the idea that is the sustainability of some factors over the time that is going to drive you to develop burnout. But I wanted to first of all to tell you that burnout per se is going to be under research since a lot of decades ago. The first researcher was Hans Selye, and I like one definition that he stated on stress at that moment, that stress in job is essentially the mismatch between job demands and the resources. And this is something that you can paint very easily. If you feel that the demands are, if you feel that the demands are that big, and your internal and external resources are that big, maybe you can feel good, because this is the typical situation where you are about to be in the zone. You can catch up that space by adding an extra mile, and then you're going to develop mastery. That's a good thing, maybe, and you're going to go into flow. This is not something that you can keep over the time for all your entire life, but it's something good. But if you perceive that the demands on your organization are that big and your resources are that big, this is a source of anxiety. This is a source of pain. This is not a source of challenge of any type. Okay. And in parallel, you can say, okay, what's happening in the opposite? Quite in the opposite. If the demands are that big, and I feel that my resources are that one. Okay. In that situation, is the situation called as burnout. I mean, I'm being stressed by being bored. But we're not going to talk about burnout right now. But it's a problem too. So summarizing, what are we talking when we're talking about burnout syndrome? Well, we're talking about this mismatch on job demands and resources that sustained over the time can develop those factors, those internal factors. I'm going to name it because I am essentially, if you feel the burnout index, you're going to have more resources to read it on your own. But essentially, and we use these 4 factors classification and taxonomy because following the European research, because we found, right now the burnout index is the largest data set in the world, and we found that having a 4 factors have better psychometric properties. So we find that this is the best classification instead of having just a 3-1 that is the most common one. That is essentially related to exhaustion, and this is the common one. I mean, we tend to say that we are burned out when we are exhausted. And exhaustion is not only about physical exhaustion. It can be cognitive exhaustion. It can be emotional exhaustion, and when you feel that you are fatigued. Okay, cynicism is with exhaustion is considered the core of burnout. Developing cynicism means that you are essentially developing some distance that is not instrumental, that is not useful, but distance with what you do that generates you problems, that generates you troubles in terms that makes you feel detached from your work in a way that affects you negatively, that you feel that the work doesn't provide you anything, doesn't provide you purpose, that you can't provide anything to the task, to the company, or to the general purpose of where the company it is. Forgive my French, but this is the moment when you say, okay, I don't give a shit of what this is going to be. And so just pull request and that's it, okay? The Depersonalization is very related with cynicism, but it's the mental distance that you have not with the task or the company or what you do or what the company can bring to you, but with the people surrounding you. And this is a classical situation of people in that you're going to see, people, medical doctors or people facing customers a lot, but you are going to see in software companies too. I don't know, the classical example, okay? I'm from software engineering team, and then the blah, blah, blah team of sales asked this feature and they changed it entirely, our sprint. So they are this blah, 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 blah. And I'm not going to say my more insults, Annie. So that was my last one. But essentially you disconnect, you feel that you are disconnected with the people, that the people can't bring you anything at all valuable for you as a person, as an intimate person, not as a professional, but as a person. So you disconnect with your teammates or with your team in general, with your leadership, with the customers, etc. Depersonalization, huge problem. Self-inefficacy. Self-inefficacy is the fourth factor, is the feeling that you are not accomplishing what you have to accomplish, but that feeling, that belief becomes a problem. I mean, that is a problem when that belief is a source of anxiety. It's very common to talk about the imposter syndrome here in our industry. Okay, imposter syndrome, it's not a syndrome yet in the clinic and the medical with the medical or psychological definition of syndrome, but it's something very related with this factor. Okay, if you feel that you are not accomplishing or you feel that you're less than what you should do, whatever is the definition of what you should be doing, it can become a very big anxiety factor. So, and why I am investing a bit of time explaining this? Well, essentially for this, I don't know, this is a reference to that movie, The Exorcist, okay? Every one of you that have seen The Exorcist of the classical movies with demons, there is someone that asks to the demons, what is your name? Okay, besides because I like that kind of movies sometimes, this is important because at the moment of managing this kind of abstract problems, naming the problem, describing the problem in a more precise way is a necessary condition to make it manageable. Okay, it's not enough. This is not sufficient condition, but it's a necessary condition. So naming your demons is one of the most important things to start dealing with burnout. Okay, so you don't say to one-on-one with your manager or with your trusted person, whatever he or she is, I'm bad. I'm just bad. You can say, you can tell what is happening to you in a more precise way. So, okay, but this is when I'm going to ask you some help, and I'm seeing that only 8 people is in the mural. So I'm going to share the link because I would love to have you on board to add something here. Give me a second. I'm looking for the link. Okay, I'm going to invite you for the next part. I'm going to invite you to join this mural as invite visitors, because one of the most important problems when you're dealing with burnout is essentially to discover where it's coming from. And there are 3 different types of, summarizing, three different types of, generally speaking, sources of burnout and in general mental well-being problems. The first of all are related to the problems associated with personal situations. I mean, and all of you that are familiar with the cognitive theory, you are going to find very useful to understand, very easy to understand that essentially there are things, those things are known as cognitive traps or cognitive traits that explain why the same input is going to make me feel excited and it's going to make Annie anxious. So why does it happen? Well, that essentially is because we both have our own unconscious and automatic behavior cognitive patterns that, and with those lens, we understand what is happening around us. And this is a very big, important part of the problem at the moment of dealing with burnout. But we are not going to talk about that today. The third one is related to this one that is in the middle. We are not going to tell a lot about this, but it's essentially, there is a lot of people talking about work-life balance, which is very important because we need to gain awareness about that. But here's the thing, there is not such thing as balance. I mean, and we can't discover a standard to define what is balanced. Something balanced for a person in one context can be unbalanced for exactly the same person in just a different context. If you extend that differentiation across all the different people and all different situations, all different works, you're going to find that having this definition of balance is not going to be useful if we want to treat this kind of problems. So that's why it is more common to talk in the psychological organizational perspective about work-life impact. I mean, you have a dimension, you have a role as a worker, and you have a lot of other roles. In my case, I am a husband, I am a father, I'm a friend of my friends, etc. So the problem to figure out is where and when and how my job, my work, my role as work is affecting positively should be here, my other roles in my quotes unquote life, and where, when, and how is impacting negatively my other roles. So the third source is about work-life impact, but we are not going to talk about this today. What we are going to talk is about to discover causes. Oh, this is moving to everyone. Okay, that's what I was looking for. More help is essentially because this is the framework to understand that better explains regarding the impact in well-being. This is the framework that better explains changes in your mental well-being, not only considering burnout, but extending to other aspects like work engagement, for instance. It's related with the idea that there are risk factors and there are protector factors. I mean, factors that increase the risk of developing burnout and factors that protects you from developing burnout. And the most important idea here is to find out that those factors are not generic one, are very specific one, are related to how you deal with your team, how you deal with your task, how you deal with your organization, and how do you deal with the leadership. So, I mean, inside of them, we are not going to explore them one by one because we are running out of time, but essentially, my invitation is to spend 3 minutes, no more than that, so you can help us essentially putting with post-its like this one, putting some examples of situations where you see that, for instance, something regarding your team is an stressor, increase the risk of developing burnout, increase the risk of developing exhaustion, depersonalization, cynicism, or self-inefficacy. Why I'm doing that? Well, because essentially the goal of Andela was to bring to their community a talk useful for them. And besides the generic explanation of burnout, the most likely thing is that you are going to find behaviors or specific examples that that relates a lot with your own experience, and that those specific examples are going to be more useful than the frameworks that I want to share. So right now, opening just a couple of minutes, I'm going to invite you to fill this just adding some post-its. Whatever you want regarding risk factors or protector factors, please just add some post-its. I have added some as examples. If you don't want to, if someone don't want to share any experience or something like that, you can go and prepare a cup of coffee.
Marcos, is it possible you explain how to create a?
Yeah, well, it's pretty easy. Let's once you enter as visitor, if you go close to the factor that you want to add an example, as let's say leadership, or let's say, I don't know, team, because I feel that you may just double click, and when you may double click, you can explain every, I don't know, in retrospectives, I share my concerns about technical debt in a code base that I only maintain, but they don't take this into account. I don't know. And this is just an example, but I have heard that many times. Oh. Those are all anonymous, so feel free to write in the terms you feel more clear. You can take a look at the square below the factor, like in protector factors related to organizational satisfaction with the benefits package, employability, pride of belonging, feel valued. I mean, most of the times we tend to forget that kind of protector factors because we consider it done, and then we lose it, and that's a problem. Okay, so time's up. Okay, well, what was my idea? First of all, this is going to stay here for you, so you can take a look at the other examples, and maybe you discover that those examples resonates well with you. And why this is important? Well, essentially because to manage burnout, you don't only need to make it to describe in a way that is manageable, to put it names and to track it, but you need to work over specific triggers, not to generic ones. I mean, just investing in burnout is going to be a source of failure. Investing in working in specific problems is going to increase your chances to be successful. I won't promise you that you're going to be successful whatever it takes, but so this is the third message I wanted to share. Work on specific triggers, and this is a very common framework to think about it. And the last one, so what I wanted to share is, okay, but what I wanted to do, how can we deal with burnout once we have discovered where are we in the journey as a person, where are we as a team? Once we put a name into our problems and we can track them, what can we do if we have discovered the specific triggers? Okay, there are good best practices around this. Most of them come from the sanitarian perspective, from the clinical perspective. I would like to share some of them. This is not a comprehensive list. This is just to opening the talk, for opening the talk and to honor the time we have. First of all, the most important one is that burnout and mental well-being in general needs to be tackled at 3 different levels: at the individual level, at the team level, and at an organizational level. If you remove any one of these, higher chances you have that someone is going to be frustrated. Okay, because if you have a person very committed with a personal journey, investing a lot of their energy into removing the barriers to having a happier work environment, etc. But the team doesn't, it's not with him or her. Okay, this is going to be frustrating, and that extends across the different levels. So, but some things to do and some things to don't do that could be great, don't do. And again, this is just a not comprehensive list. At the individual level, I like this meme. I mean, we should take we see the signals when about where and when we should take a break. What we used to do, okay, essentially we used to take a break when everything is on red. So something to do is, for instance, to track burnout and to track well-being levels, to track and don't hack those signals. I mean, okay, I know I have a lot of exhaustion, but this is going to this is nothing. This is only for this time. A month after this, okay, I'm still exhausted, but okay, this is okay. I can handle this. Okay, no, that's the typical situation where you are hacking the system, and the most likely thing is that your body is going to hack you. Okay. Something that some don'ts at the individual level, trying to become the hero, the hero for yourself or the hero for others. This is something very important. You are not a hero, and you're not someone that can be over the human limitations. We all have our own limitations. So again, some other things that are very common, expect a lot from individual instances. I mean, it is a very good idea if you feel that you are being overloaded, cognitively overloaded, emotionally overloaded, to start with practices like yoga, mindfulness, etc. But you don't have to split everything from yoga, mindfulness, etc. And even more, yoga, mindfulness, etc. doesn't work necessarily for everyone in the world. And it's not a solution for everything, okay? Another, just to move forward faster, at the team level, the classical situation, okay, my dear team leader, I'm feeling bad. Okay, yes, very sad. Okay, move on. What's the next thing in agenda, okay? At this level, something that some don'ts at the team level: to ask a lot, do nothing. That only drive to frustration, and that only drive to more cynicism. So that's why we're going to see that at the organizational level, running those big surveys that every company run at every 6 months is a very good idea to change policies at high level. But this is not enough to do things to take care of the teams or to take care of individuals, because people is going to be burned out in between of those big surveys. Okay, so you need to do a lot of small steps, and that kind of small steps are usually in charge of the leader of the team. For instance, some other things to do at the team level: set the example. Share how do you take care of yourself, and how do you do that? Well, essentially showing off what do you do to take care of that. Don't expect what the others follow the same path. Right? I mean, they are not going to do exactly the same, but they're going to do, okay, this is fair in this team to talk about how I'm taking care about myself. Because it is very common to say, okay, to the company saying, okay, mental health is very important across all levels, but planning is about productivity, retrospective is about productivity, daily is about productivity, and one-on-one is about productivity at some point, and my career path and sense of purpose, etc. So if you don't start setting the bar and setting the example about that, this is important, I can talk about this, your example is going to speak a lot about what is expected here. At the organizational level, maybe this is too much. I mean, employees must, I don't know if you're seeing what say here, but employees must stop crying before returning to work. This is the cynicism at I don't know, God level. You have to go and cry in the bathroom and then come back and keep working because problems happening outside this job. This is a classical situation. And okay, Don't be a jerk is also a good advice. Something to do at the organizational level. For instance, keep the pace on asking actions at almost every level, not asking for metrics. Okay, how are we in our workplace ranking today? Best workplace of the universe ranking today. Maybe it's good, maybe that works a lot in terms of employee brand, etc. But this is not the solution, because the company can be okay, my chair can be okay, I have the best tools, I have a very good job description, and I even have a very good career path, but I can feel very miserable at the inside. Okay, so we need to work at the 3 levels. Share the language. One of the classical problems, or one of the classical advantages, is where you see the leadership team using exactly the same language, because that means that this thing is into the agenda of everyone across the organization. Other good tips, and that's the last one. Don't do one shots. Don't invest everything on this is going to be our big program across the organization. Or don't rely only in the mega big super hyper archie annual survey. Okay, because you're going to have a lot of information, but the most likely thing is that that kind of information is going to be full of, I don't know, ego defensive responses, social desirability bias, etc., etc., etc. And those are triggers of bad data, and all those are triggers of, at the end of the day, of not tackling the problems that the root causes of the burnout. So summarizing, and sorry, Annie, because I took too much time, summarizing this part as three levels to work on, a lot of best practices and a lot of bad practices. Well, that was the idea of the talk. First of all, how can I move this? Burnout doesn't happen overnight. Name your demons, work over specific triggers, and 3 levels to work on. And that's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Marcus. That was super engaging, interactive, and enlightening. And I'm sure a couple of us have, got to understand, when we should take a break, at what point we should take a break. We shouldn't wait for when we're on red before we take a break. And so this is the right time to go right into questions. We have a couple of questions here. I'm sure you can see them, but I'll read them out for you.
Yeah, I can see it. I can see it. I can read it.
Yeah.
Being remote. Okay, go ahead.
Right. So first question is, being remote workers at Andela, there is by definition a distance with tasks to achieve. How does one keep focus?
Honest question. I don't know. Honest answer. I don't know. To be honest, maybe reframing the question, I could get something to say, but I prefer to be honest. I don't know. Maybe.
I think what
there is a lot of, I have seen that kind of questions a lot of time before. It's a cultural thing. The answer is cultural sometimes. And how do you set boundaries in your company?
Cool. Awesome. Second question says, my score of burnout index was 3.3. How do I take it how do I talk about it with my manager?
Okay, good one. First of all, maybe there are some links, and maybe Mars or someone in the team can share the links on how to talk about these kind of results on the chat. But generally, one of the most important things here is to ask questions. Even in the situation, I talk about the prevention and the crisis stage and the intervention. Across all the path, one of the most important things is to ask questions, not to express things, not to tell others what they should do. So one of the most valuable steps to do here is to ask questions. I mean, I got 3.3 of this burnout test. What do you think about it? The most likely thing is that it's gonna be other questions like, are you concerned about that? What part of the thing of this is concerning for you? So the idea is to start the conversation, to start over the conversation, not to start the perfect conversation, you know, because with mental health, we are always in risk of starting things that we can't manage, and that's real. And I won't lie to you, this is real. This is going, even more, this is something that is going to happen. But if you don't start the conversation, you are not going to find out what happens. You're not going to find out. If the most likely thing is that you open an honest conversation, and if you don't feel comfortable talking with your manager, just find out someone that is trusting for you, a buddy, and someone that you can trust to start talking about this. And if you don't feel comfortable about talk about this with your manager, maybe you should Google something about psychological safety in your environment to start exploring that direction. Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, Marcus. So the next question says, how does one take a break from work when all the work is on that individual, especially if he or she is in a one-man team?
I'm going to tell you my story. I'm the CEO of a company. There are a lot of things that only I can do, because essentially investors expect from me, my team expects from me a lot of things, and I have a lot of rationales around the idea that only me can do that things, and I have a lot of things to do to tell you and to explain you why only me can do that. But there is something that we can discuss. If I got burned out, no one is going to have anything at all. Okay, so burnout is too late. Burnout is going to be a game changer, and you are not going to have the chances to do anything in that team and in any team for a lot of time. So my idea is to express you that maybe there are not answers to that question in a more technical way. How you can handle, how can you delegate things, and how can you deal with the prioritization and how the scarce the resources are, etc. There is something above all of this, that is, and what happens if you burn it out? So if you're in a critical situation, this is not a question if you are going to burn out. This is just a matter of when. Okay.
Cool. Awesome. Next question says, what can you do when you take short vacations and it still doesn't solve the issue of burnout?
Oh. Adding extra questions to that. How can I go to vacations if it's something that is burning me out a lot in my workplace? Okay, that's there is an entire work in the psychological space around recovery, energetic recovery. How do you recover energy when you are under a lot of stress, and then you can manage that because of reasons. So essentially, generally speaking, the rules are the same than I shared on the presentation. I mean, you need to find out, you need to describe, you need to put on words what is causing you burnout, and need to find the sponsors across the organization to work on those issues. Again, you can't handle everything alone. And there is something that you should start working on your own. There is essentially, how do you process internally all those things? And that's maybe the space for doing things like, again, yoga, mindfulness, etc. But that's your own level of responsibility and agency on the problem. But there are a lot of things that should be done across all the organization to remove those burnout triggers. So what to do when you come from vacations? Okay, first of all, if you are running out of vacations, if you are going to into vacations and there is something that is generating burnout, first of all, try to maximize, plan your vacations in order to maximize job detachment at the electrical thing, and not only psychological detachment, but detaching from all other things and that connects you with work. Develop some kind of work on how to take sense of the agenda. I mean, one of the most important things in energetic recovery is the sense of controlling your own time. So plan things that if you don't plan, you wouldn't do it in another way. So plan things that surprise you. Okay, I'm doing this. I'm surprised because I don't know, I'm procrastinating this since the last maybe 12 months. Okay, I love the idea that setting a hole in my agenda for doing this. This is going to contribute you on sense of control of your time. The third one is the developing mastery in other thing totally different than job. So to prepare for going into vacation is something very important. I hope sometime we can create some community tools and approaches to help into that direction. But this is something very important. And after you come back, the generic responses that I share on the talk, maybe.
That's very insightful. I think personally for me, I'm going to learn from that answer you just gave, how to detach from work when you go on vacations, because most of us tend to still check our Slacks, check our emails, check, all those tools while we're on vacation. And so you're still burnt out even when you return. So that's
we the humans have this kind of superpower, because when a gazelle a gazelle is in English the animal, a gazelle. Okay, when a gazelle is see a lion, it has a lot of adrenaline and cortisol, and it starts running away at a very high velocity, etc. And it's totally stressed. But once the gazelle stops watching and seeing the lion, stress ends. What happened with you and with me when we have a very stressful meeting and we're going to go into our house, and then you say, okay, then I'm going to take a rest and tomorrow is going to be a different day? No, your brain doesn't work in that way. Then you're going to keep thinking on that, maybe struggling with that, and the cortisol in your blood is going to keep flowing, etc., etc. So we're not as smart as the gazelles at some point. This is functional, but that's why when we stop, and it's very hard to detach from work because our brain keep connected with that. Okay.
Yeah.
So don't blame yourself if you feel connected.
Cool. So we have one more question, and this is an interesting question from Clifford. It says, how can introverts manage burnout at an individual level? He's asking because by default, introverts like to isolate themselves, yet this is one of your don'ts or your do nots. So.
Yeah. Even introvert people get connected with other people somehow. So the first step is still, it still works. I don't know, maybe you talk with in Discord with other teammates, with other people while you're playing games. Maybe that's a good starting point. We have found out that in parallel, we have found out that putting numbers to things, it's a very useful thing to get this talk done. I mean, because you don't have to convince anyone that this next thing that you are going to tell is true or is based on something or is meaningful, etc. It's just a number. So sometimes we found out that that putting numbers and just sharing a screen about this is something that with your trusted person inside the team is useful. But to be honest, I tend to think that this is a question more related to how to deal with this kind of personality and this is maybe beyond this talk, and so I want to be respectful and only giving, not try to share with you magic responses. This is not going to happen in that way. Okay, so summarizing, start conversation with others, no matter what is your channel or no matter what are those others. Just start the conversation with them, and maybe if you try testing the idea of that, just sharing something like an instrument like numbers is useful for you to start the conversation with those people.
Awesome. Cool. And one last question from Toby. It says, what do you do when your boss and coworkers don't understand work time boundaries? They reach out to you over the weekends and after work hours, even when the reason is not so important.
Okay, let's say something that is always present in this industry. You can move away from the company. Always. I'm not going to promote that, because the most likely thing is that you are not going to be developing your more personal skills at that point. But this is the controversial thing to say, but I'm going to say it. You can move away always. But in that situation, one of the most important things are the general things that you are going to see about feedback. I mean, not telling about how do you feel, but telling about the evidence about something that crosses some boundaries. So tagging those moments that violated, that are not honoring the arrangements that you have on how are you going to manage your calendar, and expressing them and sharing with them those moments, those specific moments, are going to be a very useful way, because the most likely thing is that your boss and coworkers don't see that this is a problem that is happening steadily and that is happening with the same cadence that you see, or with the same amount of times that you see that are happening, because they consider that those are important, and maybe they are used to work on some kind of chaotic environment. This is me. And so, but sharing feedback with evidence is the most important step to give when you see this problem. Maybe, okay, but this is the first step, to tag the situations, to describe the situation, to share a specific situation where this happened. And again, if you feel that you are not that, let me emphasize this. If you feel that you are not able to talk about these things in a trust and a meaningful and a respectful way, maybe the problem is higher than just how your team use the agenda. Okay?
Awesome. This has been a great, about 1 hour of very insightful, engaging soft skill that was learned for both me and I'm sure everyone who has joined here today. And so we can go back after this and know when to cut off from work, how to cut off from work, and not get to the red lights in our well-being as software engineers or as professionals in general. And so at this point, I'd like to say thank you so much to Marcus for being our guest here today and sharing your well-versed experience, in this area of soft skill in our professional lives. And so thank you so much, Marcus. Thank you to the Yebo team, and thank you to everyone who has joined here today. And so until next time, it's bye-bye from us.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you for the invitation. See you.
All right, bye.
Bye, take care.